From the director of Cloverfield Paradox and 5 different writers, Brave New World is unsurprisingly really bad. I want to preface this by saying I really like Captain America: Winter Soldier. That movie is in my top 5 for the MCU, and knowing that Brave New World was going to try to be similar to that movie, I had an inkling of interest going in. However, Brave New World fails to emulate Winter Soldier on every level. The first major aspect that's squandered is the mysterious plot. This is the core foundation of any espionage thriller, and the story is very convoluted for what the main villain tries to achieve. His goal is to essentially besmirch Thaddeus Ross while turning him into the Red Hulk. But the entire plot doesn't exactly line up with this goal and feels needlessly complicated. It's as if the writers wanted this rabbit hole conspiracy and completely botched the execution. It's also laughably silly, and the writers gloss over this point of the villain being able to control people's minds by flashing lights at them and playing music, which is just insane and completely ignores that it takes a lot of psychological conditioning to brainwash people like Bucky. If the movie wasn't trying to be serious, then you can get away with absurd MacGuffins and plot devices like that, but that's not the case. It creates this false, ominous atmosphere where the villain can turn anyone at any moment into their mindless drone. It's cheap, it feels unearned, and it's a flat-out terrible plot device that borderline makes the villain omega overpowered, and we're just at the whims of the villain not trying to win. Which, speaking of the villain, this is honestly probably my least favorite in the MCU, which there's quite a bit of competition for that title. It's kind of ironic that the other worst villain in the MCU is attached to Sam's story, but the villain for Brave New World is supposed to be this Brainiac type character who is extremely smart, but is somehow overcome and is constantly making baffling decisions. Along with his motivations being inconsistent, where in some scenes he's trying to kill Sam Wilson, and then in others, he's not. I would go into the villain, but since it's technically a spoiler to reveal his identity, I'll move on to another point that makes the plot even worse. Which is, besides the underwhelming villain reveal, the main point of mystery is spoiled for us, and that's the Red Hulk reveal. Everything is building to that moment, and the movie is constantly putting a massive question mark on that topic. But since we know this from the trailer, all that mystery is meaningless.
This is worthless.
This would be fine if the Red Hulk reveal takes place during Act 2, and then we build to a bigger and more devastating plot point in Act 3, but that's not how the movie is formatted. Marvel willingly spoiled their movie to market it because they knew no one would come to see this movie off of just Sam Wilson as Captain America. This would be like going into Winter Soldier knowing that Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. However, for that movie, there are numerous other reveals that keep the story fresh and exciting throughout. Brave New World only has 2 main twists, and revealing the ending one handicaps the movie's intrigue. Then, unlike Winter Soldier, Brave New World has scant little else going for it. Another massive failure committed by Brave New World is that this is the movie that needed to sell Sam Wilson as Captain America. We needed a compelling and great character arc that binds us to him and makes us love his character. After watching the movie, he basically doesn't even have one. The only way he changes is that he considers the fact that he's fragile, needs to be more careful, and is slightly considering wanting to take super serum. That's it. There's maybe like 5 to 10 minutes where the movie explores the internal state of Sam. Other than that, Sam Wilson is essentially driven by the plot. It's as if he's just going down a checklist and is only trying to solve this grand conspiracy. There's nothing that happens on this journey that forces him to change as a character. Comparing this to Winter Soldier, Steve transitions from a soldier blindly following orders to a true leader who questions authority, paves his own path, and prioritizes personal loyalty over duty. His arc and him trying to save Bucky reinforces his strong moral compass and leads to him being in a state where he doesn't trust government supervision in Civil War. Everything in the plot is designed to push Steve down this arc, while in Brave New World, Sam Wilson doesn't have any meaningful character growth that synergizes with the story. If you take his character from the beginning and compare him to the end, he's practically the same. To me, that's a pretty big failure on the writing front, and is not surprising that his character arc was lost in the hurricane of writers and rewrites. It's kind of odd that Thaddeus Ross has way more characterization than the main character of the movie. Because of that, he pretty much overshadows Sam, and this also comes down to Harrison Ford being an icon.
You want me to pull my pants down and make my ass clap?
I thought he turned in an uninspired performance, but he's ironically putting in the most effort here. Isaiah Bradley as well was able to garner a lot of sympathy, and anytime he was on screen, I was partially enjoying the film. For Anthony Mackie, his acting is very divisive amongst fans, and the biggest point of criticism is him being a charisma sink. But for me, I can't personally condemn the actor because the script he was given was dog shit. Like, I don't think he's great or anything, but you're only as good as the words on the page. Everyone else is very bland, and Sam's sidekick doesn't really evolve past just being his quippy friend, and there's this random widow character. This all oddly resembles a similar dynamic to Winter Soldier, except this is essentially the discount version. I also want to go into the movie's tone because I think that's the most important aspect for a serious and unnerving espionage thriller. Winter Soldier had scarce humor, and even if there were moments of levity, it never upended the tension of a scene. For Brave New World, the tone of the movie felt more like an Indiana Jones film. Sam is constantly quipping, and he's throwing out one-liners every time he defeats an enemy. I don't think there was a single moment I found remotely funny, and this further degrades the tone into being more silly. At this point, I know this is pretty much expected for Marvel in general, but when the movie is clearly being marketed as being similar in tone to Winter Soldier, then it's going to annoy me. Like, the movie immediately opens with this covert op, and everyone is treating the situation like they're messing around and having fun. Winter Soldier basically has the same opening plot point, which I guess is a separate issue. However, it's done in a grounded and gritty nature that expertly sets the tone for the film. Brave New World resembles this at some strong moments. However, there are so many conflicting elements within the narrative that contradicts the tone of the film. This also moves past just the jokes and also goes into the villain being comically silly and his overall power, if you can even call it that. It makes me wish that Sidewinder, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito, was the main villain. He's effortlessly scary and intimidating, and is a much more natural fit to the tone of the film. Unfortunately, he's in like 3 scenes, and as other people have pointed out, he was probably thrown in during the rewrites. This again makes me think that Brave New World had way too many cooks in the kitchen because the tone was so inconsistent, instead of having one unifying vision. Since this is Marvel, there's also quite a bit of action, and despite apparently reshooting pretty much all of the action, most of it was rather unmemorable or was fine. It never felt like this, or was as powerful as this, or was as epic as this. A core fundamental ingredient for an action scene being great is not just the choreography, but how it's propped up by the story. Most of Winter Soldier's action scenes take place during pivotal moments and also twist the narrative in exciting directions. This imbues the action with this insane weight as you actually care about the outcome of each scene. For Brave New World, most of the action is just fighting random goons in hallways, and it's never elevated with creative direction and storytelling. It feels more like, oh, we need more action at this point because we've gone 20 minutes without an action scene, instead of it having a great impact on the story and also being more unique. The 2 primary set pieces outside of the minor ones are the jet battle and the Red Hulk fight. For the fighter jet scene, the camera was always shaking like crazy, it felt extremely CGI heavy, which takes away from the action being grounded and engaging, and there were some moments where the green screen usage was blatantly obvious. Then for the Red Hulk fight, I think the first half of it was fun, in which the Hulk was essentially destroying the White House, but then they switch locations and it loses that destructive and dynamic feel. I'll go into spoilers now as it's marked on the video's timecode, and I'll address the ending of the Red Hulk scene. The fact that Sam Wilson resolves the Red Hulk fight by talking down Thaddeus was silly and underwhelming. He just fought him and wrecked his shit for 5 minutes straight, and after the Red Hulk disables his wing and has bested his foe, Sam just Uno reverse cards Red Hulk into not being angry anymore. It honestly reminds me of the miniseries ending in which he comes down and tells the senators to do better.
You've got to do better, Senator.
It's an odd plot point, and I don't understand why they have a Bucky cameo earlier in the movie, where he just says hi and then leaves, and they don't bring him back for the finale. It kind of reeks of rewrites and reshoots, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bucky was supposed to be in the Red Hulk fight, but he wasn't available since he's been very busy lately. At the very least though, they gave Sam vibranium wings that convert damage into potential energy just like Black Panther, making the fight not feel like it was insanely outmatched, but with another superhero helping him, that power level gap wouldn't be as major. Another partial spoiler is that Thaddeus wants to reassemble the Avengers. However, considering that he was so gung-ho on wanting to Sokovia all over their Accords, it feels pretty jarring from a character motivation perspective to want to revive the Avengers all of a sudden. He's like, yeah, the Avengers are great and they have saved the world, even though that was the same argument used in Civil War, despite there being collateral damage. It's as if Thaddeus is entirely ignoring his primary argument for the sake of artificially wanting to get the Avengers back together. But that whole notion also disintegrates considering that Thaddeus and Sam have a falling out. So that also adds to the movie's underwhelming nature and Sam being the driving force to bring back the Avengers, and that not actually happening. Then there are even characters from Falcon and the Winter Soldier that don't even get addressed, like Sharon Carter. I guess she's face down dead in a ditch somewhere, and I honestly don't think she'll ever be mentioned again given the current climate of the MCU. At the very least though, they finally addressed the massive celestial sticking out of the ocean 5 years later. Captain America Brave New World reminds me of that scene from Spaceballs where they capture the gang but it turns out to be all the stunt doubles. That's what Brave New World is, an uninspired, botched, and hideous copy that tries to emulate one of the best MCU movies, and utterly fails by not understanding what made it great to begin with. Brave New World has some nice aspects here and there, but what little potential the movie had, it stood no chance being rewritten multiple times with 5 different writers. Thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think about this film because there's a lot wrong with it. My Letterboxd, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and have a great day. As always, thank you to my incredible patrons Logan Farmer and Simply Put.